Hey everybody, so here's my answer video. There was a lot of really great answers to this question, and I hope that you went in there and were able to read your peers' work. The question is, before you photograph a public figure, it is best to research your subject. Assume you are assigned the task of photographing Stephen King, the writer, in his home. Describe the research and the photographic process you would use to shape your idea for the photograph. Describe how you would use light, quality, direction, and ratio to make your photograph most effective. And so, my answer would begin very much the way most of yours would. I would be certain to research my subject. I would this is me, not everybody is like this, some people find this stifling, but I always research what has already been done by other photographers on the same subject to make sure that, one, I'm being relevant, and two, I'm not being repetitive. I don't want anybody getting all up in arms about me copying them when I didn't even look at their image to begin with, right? That would be awkward. So I make sure that I look out there in find several versions of this particular subject so that I am relevant to them without being repetitive. I would also, to the best of my ability, see if I could scope out his house. It probably would be difficult. I suspect most people are rather private and don't want you to be able to know much about their home before you arrive, and very likely you'll only be able to have one visit to your subject's home. People who are as successful as Stephen King don't get that way by letting folks visit them many times for one small little project. So you're probably going to have to come up with a plan without really knowing your location very well. You don't know where or even if you'll have power. You don't know if there's high quality available light to use. You don't know anything. So you're going to have to prepare quite a bit. And so my comfort level is this. I would take as much equipment as I needed to be in complete control of the light, and that means lots and lots of C-stands and lots of black material, whether it's large pieces of foam core or black fabric, so that I can block available light, because I don't know if it's going to work for me or not. I would come up with a very thorough, well, more than one very thorough plan where I'm completely in control of the light, and I would do my best to execute those plans and block whatever available light there is. And like I said, plans. So what I would do is, in my own studio, I would assume a reasonable amount of space, say 10 by 10 feet, 12 by 12 feet, something like that. And I would draw up, 1 to 3 diagrams of potential light setups. And I would keep these with me. They would be simple, just grids with circles where my lights would be, and a note on what modification tool I would be using on that light, if any, whether it's through an umbrella or with a reflector on an umbrella, if I was going to use wide reflectors on my lights, or if I was going to use snoots or something like that. I'd have those kind of notes there. And then I would have an indication of where my subject is. And I would set these up in my studio, because it wouldn't take long to do this in your studio. And, practice with a stuffed animal or whatever, and check my light ratios with my meter and make sure everything was going to come out the way I wanted it to, within reason. So my creative plan would be, one, to have my subject a little bit above the camera. I think that Stephen King isn't just a famous writer; he's also a shrewd businessman. He's very powerful, and so I would want to convey that psychologically. So I would probably have an angle where I was looking up to him and he was looking down on me. So he's looking down on the viewers, not in a condescending way, of course, but just in a way of somebody who has power. It's a psychological trick, and I would just go with it. Next, I would plan very specifically to light the background and my subject separately. I think I would creatively be choosing to light the background to emphasize his creative work and light him to emphasize his character. So in my mind, the background's going to be, like everyone kind of suggested, something in his house. I don't know what he's going to have. He might have some fantastic statues. He might have a crazy library. I don't know, a fountain. I don't know, something. And I'm going to make that pretty dramatic. I'm going to be using as much light blocking material as I can to get it really dark in there. And I'm just going to add emphasizing lights to describe contour, but I'll keep it fairly dark. And then I'll probably shoot through gobos. I'll just cut out shapes from black foam core and put it in front of my light to kind of abstract the light even more and to make it a little bit menacing, let's say. And then for my subject, I would have 3 different light scenarios set up in advance that I could switch quickly, just to make sure. Of course, I would probably want to go with a very directional light, shoot from one side or the other, choose his, his prominent or dominant eye or side of his face, and light that, leave the other in shadow, making sure that I got enough light back into the other eye, so both eyes have a little bit of light reflecting from them, so we don't have a dead half of the face, or completely black out one half of the face and let it be like that. I would also shoot, that would be directional, it would be split lighting, but it would be a very high ratio, 1:8 or higher, And then I would also do a probably a split hard with a little bit of fill, and then I would do a soft, like, I want to say high key, but it wouldn't be very, very high. But the reason being that we would think that to emphasize character, we would assume that we would use strong directional light with a high light ratio, because it's going to really emphasize every bit of experience on somebody's face, that being really the topography, the wrinkles of their face. However, not everybody looks good in hard light, so I want to make sure that I also shoot him in a couple different types of light to make sure. So he's not going to have to move. I'm just going to quickly move my lights. I've already practiced this in my own studio, so everything should work out beautifully. And then this way I've got 3 different images that I can choose from that are going to be a little bit different, because I don't want the man to feel horribly insulted by just looking unattractive by my light quality. So like I said, first I would have directional light, high ratio. Then I would do the soft light, where it would be rather flat on him. And then I would probably just do, like a classic portraiture with one hard light being my key light, and then a little bit of passive fill bouncing back into him. I would make sure that I take a telephoto lens that's got a really wide open aperture, because typically human subjects they're more flattered with a telephoto lens. That would be my lens of choice, and I would make sure, again, that I had a wide open aperture in case, I couldn't get enough power for my strobes or something and I was stuck with incandescent lights. I don't know. I would also be using strobes. I would be using a battery pack, because I don't want to mess around, trying to find a light source in a place that I've never been, or I'm sorry, a power source in a place that I've never been. And I just think it's awkward when I blow a fuse in somebody else's house or business. So I would be taking a battery pack to solve that problem. Let's see, what else? I would make sure that if I just brought my accessory lights, if I intended to use them, he would probably benefit from a little bit of a hair light, a backlight, a hair light, or a kicker. This sort of thing can be very flattering if you're taking an image with hard light. Let's see, I think that was about it. That was about it. I guess otherwise, when I'm looking at your answers, I'm just looking to make sure that you answered the question in full. I want to know, what sort of research you did on Stephen King. I want to know how you planned your shoot, how thoroughly you prepared yourself, and I want to know, and I really am looking to make sure that you describe exactly how you're going to use light quality, direction, and ratio to make your photograph effective. Hopefully, through this exercise, you're able to build in your own mind a creative vision then that you could, execute in your mind and figure out how you would use your lighting tools to do that. So hopefully most of your answer is really describing how you're going to use light quality, direction, and ratio to make your photograph effective. And then in the lecture, you could have quoted any place in the lecture. You could have talked about any of these tools. You could have talked, all the lighting tools. You could have quoted anywhere here. There's a great section in light ratio here. It gives a nice description on how to create light ratios. And then you could have even quoted the movie that I give you in the announcements on how to meter light ratios. There's different light scheme movies here, I think, for you, yeah. And then a little bit about accessory lights here. Time organization and setup, just, suggestions. Pros tips are always really helpful. You can, always quote those. And then in your text, let's see if I can find it. You know what? I have it. I have my hard copy right here. I'm just going to tell you. I'm not going to show it to you on the screen because I wouldn't have it up there long enough for you to read it anyways. But on page 258 in Light Science and Magic starts a whole section on traveling light, meaning shooting on location. Anything from this chapter is really relevant. It's really just fantastic advice, lots of tips, Really good stuff. Really good illustrative photographs and diagrams. I love this book. So I mean, there's a lot of places in the books you could have pulled from, but this would have been good. Chapter 10, starting on page 285, Traveling Light. You can quote anything from there to answer this question, and you'd be good. There's a lot of other places, again, like I said, that you could quote from the book, but I think that that's particularly relevant here. Okay, thank you very much for all your hard work in week 3, and I'm really looking forward to week 4. I think it's going to be fun because you're going to be shooting on location. Hope you're all well.